Text Expander from Smile is supporting this edition of MacVoices. Text Expander can help you be more productive in every single application on your Mac. Find out how at textexpander.com. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, I am really happy to have Scholle McFarland back. That's the good news. The bad news is it seems like she only comes back, she doesn't love us. The only time she comes back is when she's doing a Take Control book. Scholle, how are you? It's good to see you.
I'm doing great. Thanks, Chuck.
We've got to drag you out more often and get you involved in some of the other fun things we do here. But right now, of course, I in some ways I shouldn't be saying that because I'd rather have you slaving away on books like Take Control of Siri. Because that's what we're here to talk about. And it's something that apparently a lot of people wanted to know about.
Yes, the publisher of the Take Control series put out a survey to all the readers asking them what topics Take Control hadn't covered that they most wanted to read about, and Siri was the top one. So that's why we got this book together.
Well, it's a topic that seems to come up constantly. You know, what can you do with Siri? How good is Siri? How do you use Siri most effectively? And of course, inevitably, you end up with the comparisons to the other voice assistants. So maybe I'll start there. Do you do any comparisons to anything, or is this pretty much just a straight guide just to Siri?
Well, the comparisons we do are really in the section of the books that covers privacy issues. I have at the back of the book kind of a most frequently asked questions about privacy issues with Siri. And that's really where I touch on how it's different, in particular from Alexa. Over the past year, Apple has really refocused their business model to target security as one of their main selling points. And I think with Siri, this is really very evident. I don't know if you use Alexa. We had an Echo in our kitchen for a while, but some information came out about how Alexa could be accidentally triggered and record whole conversations. There was an incident where it actually recorded a conversation and sent it to someone. That was kind of the big news story. But we actually did go on our Amazon account, and anybody can do this who has an Alexa, and looked to see what was recorded. And it's all there. It's logged to your name. And we discovered that our Alexa unit had recorded tons of conversations of just our kids talking about things. And that was really creepy. So we got rid of our Echo and moved totally over to Siri. And we got HomePods. And that is one of the things that's really different. Apple has taken a lot of care to make sure that there's not going to be whole conversations that are logged to your name up on a server somewhere. The first thing is the HomePods, for instance, but all of the Siri devices, they don't trigger, record, and send all at once. They actually have an audio buffer on the device where it's listening, but it's recording over and over that same buffer. So it's not constantly recording. It's just recording over this one thing on your device. It's not going out across the airwaves. Siri does depend on the internet, and you can't use Siri without the internet yet. There's actually some patents that Apple has put out that makes it look like maybe we will be getting completely localized Siri sometime in the near future. But it does that because the big guns of computer processing for Siri does happen back at Apple headquarters. But they make sure to, and they go into great depth about this online if anybody wants to know exactly all the details of this. They anonymize the data. So it goes and it's associated with basically a random user number that's not associated with your name or your Apple ID or your email address. And then it returns it to that. And you can actually purge that identifier anytime you want. but you will lose your training. Like the things that Siri learns about you, like the way you talk, and how that fits into dialects of wherever it is you live, that helps it understand you more clearly and accurately. That information goes away when you purge this identifier, but you can do it. And so there's a lot that's nice about that. Like if you're talking about fire trucks in your house, like you're not going to start seeing ads for fire extinguishers all over. And I mean, the fact is that Google and Amazon, their whole thing is getting information about you and then trying to match that with advertising. So Apple has taken a stand that no, they just take your money up front with your expensive devices, but they won't be selling information about you. And that includes what you say to Siri and what things you talk about. So that's really the biggest difference.
And I think let's leave the privacy there. But I do have to say this: you're the first person I've known that has taken the time to log on to Amazon, see what it's captured.
You should do it. It's really interesting.
Yeah. I bet it's interesting. Yeah, and I mean that's the way it is. And of course, this is one of the things that there's been such a discussion over. Well, Alexa's getting better, Google's getting better, and Siri doesn't seem to be keeping up. And there's a good reason that it's not keeping up. It's because it's not dumping all this data out just raw to be analyzed. So, I guess it's a matter of, how important is your privacy versus convenience?
It's true. That's one of the big things that you are trading, privacy versus convenience. And we do that now with pretty much everything we use that touches the internet. I will say, though, a lot of people feel disparaging towards Siri, and those opinions are based on how good it was in 2011 when it came out. I think there was so much excitement about Siri when it first came out, and it wasn't all that great. I mean, that's just the fact of it. It wasn't that great yet. But I was really impressed when I had some of those feelings too. Like I always have used Siri for some basic things that I think it's awesome at, and always has been. Setting timers. You can set timers with your Apple Watch, with your phone, like whatever device you have. It's so handy. Creating reminders. It's always been awesome at that. And it's just a great way to remember things. I think I came on your show and talked about my calendar and reminders book. Gosh, more than a year ago now. Siri's amazing for using reminders. And always has been. But I hadn't realized how good it had gotten at other things. And I think that's one of the things that's fun about this book is getting to get a real overview of the incredible amount of things Siri can do now, because it really ties together the whole Apple universe. And I think it's starting to really fill that role now more and more. It goes across all your devices. It goes with whatever device is nearby, depending if you set it up to be triggered by Hey Siri, which I carefully turned off Hey Siri for all my devices. I would be triggered when I said that. But Siri has really gotten a lot better, and it's worth another look.
Okay, so I guess where we go from here, you just mentioned some things that I use Siri for pretty regularly myself. What are some of the other things that folks should, if you're really starting to get into this, whether you're new to it or not, but you really want to get a lot out of Siri very quickly, other than buying your book, what are the best things to focus on?
I'd say the very most useful things, the things that Siri is the most useful for are setting timers. And with a HomePod, you can set multiple named timers. So that's really cool if you've got one in the kitchen. You can have your lasagna timer, your sauce timer, your garlic bread timer. They're all named. They're all there. Creating reminders, making a call to someone in your contacts. It's just really fast and easy to do that on your iPhone or on your Mac, actually, if you've got your Mac set up. Finding your Apple devices. That, I don't know if as many people know you can do that, but you don't have to Find My iPhone or log into iCloud on your Mac to find when you can't find your watch or you can't find your phone, you literally can just activate Siri and say, "Where's my iPhone?" And it will start to ping wherever it is. It's super convenient, and I use that all the time. Another thing that it's really useful for is retrieving web passwords, and I think a lot of people don't know that you can do that with it either. So if you need to log into a different device and you can't find your Netflix password, say your spouse needs to log into Netflix, you just pick up your phone and you say, "What's my Netflix password?" and it will give it to you. That's really convenient, and that works on the Mac as well. It's anything that you use a password for on the web. So it won't go into Keychain. It can't get your Wi-Fi password, although there are some other tricks for doing that, and I do talk about that in the book. They're not Siri tricks, but any kind of service you use with your web browser, you can easily call up that password using Siri on pretty much all of your devices.
Okay, I have to pursue that just a little
Yeah.
bit. So is that, you just said that it doesn't go into Keychain, but is that where my Netflix password has to be stored, in Keychain? If I use 1Password, it can't go in there to get it.
Well, that's a good question. It doesn't really, I'm not sure how it would interact with a password manager if you use that. But if you have anything set to autofill in Safari, it will be able to pull it up there. So it's really connecting to Safari, and the things they're also in your keychain, but they're also in the autofill in Safari. And for most people, that's a lot of things. That's Dropbox, that's Netflix, that's Hulu, like all sorts of things that you might use in a web browser or in an app on your iPhone.
Yeah, this is where, because of course Joe Kissel in any of his security books is going to say, don't use autofill because then somebody gets your Mac, they can log right in, whatever. But on the other hand, let's just face it, we're back to convenience versus security. So,
and it is protected. Like if you do that, you do either have to, like on your Mac, you'll have to type in your user password before it will pop up. On your phone, I mean, there's any number of ways that your phone verifies your identity, depending on what device you have. You have to use Touch ID or Face ID. So there are some security measures with it, but it's still a lot easier than kind of rooting around for it, which is what most of us would do otherwise. We'd also have to enter those, our user password or pass those security thresholds, but we would also be like, where is that? Where do I keep it? How do I find it? Not everybody knows that there are passwords in Safari or even knows what Keychain is. So this really simplifies something that people have to do often, finding these passwords.
Yeah. I admit I did not know that. So there you go.
Yeah, cool.
That's what I'll be doing after the show, folks.
The other thing that Siri's great at, and I think people do think of this, is just answering questions. And I hadn't realized how deep its knowledge went. I think a lot of people know that you can look up movie times or, get basic information about movies or music. I mean, obviously Siri interacts with music so much, but I went about documenting everything it could really answer. And sports, for instance, it's just incredible how much attention Apple has given to sports information with Siri. It covers 29 baseball leagues. And I've got the sports down here because I can't even ever remember. It's baseball, basketball, cricket, football, golf, hockey, motorsports, soccer, and tennis. Soccer leagues from all over the world. And you can answer so many questions. Like you can ask, how much does a player make? And it will give you salary data. You can ask any number of stats questions or league standing questions. It's got some deep knowledge there. And that happens in a bunch of different areas, some of which really come in handy a lot. Math is one of them. For instance, iPads don't even have a calculator. So people might think, how can I do math on my iPad? You do it with Siri. And it's not just basic arithmetic. It can do percentages for you, which is something I think a lot of people do all the time. Like, what's 35% of 80? Something like that. Just basic questions like that. All the way up to algebraic equations and graphing. I mean, it's hardcore. But in a practical sense, tips, splitting bills, like you can just get your Apple Watch and ask it, split $800 6 ways, and it will split it and give you the tip for each person. And it'll say 15%, 18%, 20%. Super handy thing that I didn't know it could do that. And I've already used multiple times just this past week. Then there's weird things like air quality. And I assume this comes from there being so many California fires that the California-based Apple employees included air quality now too. You can say, what's the air quality wherever you are, and you get the detailed information. You can say, was that an earthquake? And it will tell you any seismic activity that's happened in your geographic area for the past 72 hours. All sorts of just strange and wonderful pieces of information have been woven into Siri that I hadn't expected the depth or just the variety. A lot of it comes from Wolfram Alpha, so the knowledge database, and that's been there for a long time. You can do really cool things with that. Lots of science information, like how many teeth do great white sharks have? Just like all sorts of weird stuff like that. If you have a question, you really should ask Siri first, because it's not just searching the web. It hooks into these knowledge databases and these other like the geographic data, and will get you answers that are much more accurate, much more quickly than doing a web search would in a lot of instances. And of course, if you've got a mobile device, you don't have to type anything. So it's saving you time there. So it can really do a lot of cool things. And I think one of the nicest things about Siri that was unexpected to me was that it's so clear how much attention has been paid to it. There's so much love, really, and humor that's been poured onto it. It's sort of like, the fun of discovering Easter eggs with computer programs. I don't know if people do that as much anymore, but that used to be a big thing where people would look for the little hidden things that happened in programs that programmers had left for people to find. Siri is all about that. Like, it doesn't matter how simple of a thing you do. You can turn system preferences off and on your Mac with Siri. And it has like 5 different little pithy sayings it will have for each one of them. Like, it's great. It's really quintessentially Apple in that you can feel the fingerprints of the people, the team that made this all over it. And their little touches and little inside jokes are everywhere, which makes it really fun. It was a really fun book to write because of that.
So you took me one direction I really hadn't anticipated going, and that is Siri on the Mac.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Your book covers that. How do you feel? How effectively has Siri been implemented on the Mac compared to some of the other devices?
Well, I'd say the balance between using Siri and not using Siri is what's more convenient, and what will take the least amount of time. And with the Mac, that balance is not as heavily weighted towards Siri as it is on all of our mobile devices, or on the HomePod, which it has no buttons. Like, you have to use Siri with it for everything. Still, there are things that it's useful for. Like, I'm a very fast typist. I'm actually also a very fast thumb typist. I live blog public meetings here in Portland just on my phone. Like, I'm really good. So for me, it kind of takes a lot for it to be useful. And I don't use Siri on my Mac as much, even though I know all the things it can do, just because I'm already very fast. I use it primarily. I use it for math on my Mac because I don't have a numeric keyboard, so I hate trying to use calculator. It's so awkward to try to click numbers or, find them at the top of my keyboard. It's just a lot easier to ask. So I use it for that. I don't use it for system preferences as much as I could because I often just forget, and I have shortcuts that I do to pull things up. But I think for a lot of people, that would be what they would probably mostly use it for, switching preferences off and on. And that means you can say, turn on night shift, make my screen brighter. I mean, all that kind of stuff is Bluetooth on, anything that's in system preferences, all the way to you can actually put your Mac to sleep. You can just tell it, put my Mac to sleep. I think a lot of people would find that useful, but I think more experienced Mac users probably wouldn't use that unless their hands are already busy. That's where it can really be useful on the Mac. Like if you're really intensely doing something and you need to send a message to someone saying, I'm almost done. You don't have to switch out of the program you're working in. You can really just tell Siri and it'll go. But I'd say on the Mac, if you're a really experienced Mac user, you probably will use it for questions. So same thing, like if you want to know how's your favorite team doing, it's a lot easier to just ask Siri and it'll stay up in the corner of your screen while you're doing something else. Math, things like that, rather than, I for instance, wouldn't dictate an email with Siri myself. It's more likely that it's going to make mistakes. And I know if I corrected it, it would get better. But for me, it's not worth the time. So I think that's the thing on the Mac is people have to balance, like, what are the things that are going to save me time? Like, because it's not, you don't want it to just be a gimmick. Like the whole point is it's supposed to make it easier for you. So that's the balancing act. I think it's really obvious on your mobile devices how much more convenient it is because you don't have something as accurate as your keyboard to input your information with. But with a Mac, it's a little bit more of a balancing game. And I think for most people, it will be limited to a few things that they find that they really like that it does, and won't go past that. You can search for files. Actually, one really cool thing you can do on the Mac, which you can't really do any other way, is search for photos. And I don't know if you've tried this. I think we've talked about this with my operating system books. But Siri ties into this advanced computer visioning. I can't remember the exact term that Photos has. So you can actually say, hey, Siri, show me pictures of babies. And it will comb through your entire Photos database and pull up pictures of babies that are in it. Like you can say, show me pictures of oak trees. And it will look through all of your photos and bring up only the ones that have oak trees in them. It's quite specific and it's awesome if you're trying to make something with your photos or if you remember something but you don't know when it was. You can say, show me pictures of water or show me pictures of the beach. It'll pull up every picture you have that was taken at the beach. And it's through this computer intelligence. It's examining the pictures and figuring these things out, but it's really amazing. You can do more complicated searches like find pictures of Graham, which is the name of one of my kids, and cats. And it will get me all the pictures that has my son with her cats. So that's really, really cool. And you actually can't do that by hand. So there are a few things like that where you would only use Siri because you can't do it any other way.
Smile and Text Expander are supporting this edition of MacVoices. When you get a new Mac, what are the first apps you install? Which ones do you feel are the most important, the most used? The ones that make your Mac feel like your Mac and not someone else's that you've borrowed. Text Expander by Smile is at the top of my list. Why? Because saving time is important to me. Because being accurate is important to me. Because I prefer to have my Mac work for me. And Text Expander does all of those things. With Text Expander, a few characters or a short phrase expand into text and code that I use frequently. Something simple, like my full name, my address, my phone number, today's date, a few characters for each of those, and they appear, fully typed out, exactly the way I wanted them. Or something complex, like the code necessary for certain parts of publishing MacVoices. Or an introductory email to a new team member at work outlining the resources available to them. Or a request for an interview. The list goes on and on. The biggest challenge is recognizing that you type certain things over and over, and TextExpander can help you with that by watching what you type and suggesting new snippets to help you be more efficient. For those of you with multiple Macs, you can sync your snippets across so that everything is available on every machine. And for those of you with iOS devices, there's a version of TextExpander for iPhone and iPad that takes advantage of all those snippets you've already created. TextExpander requires so little and gives back so much. Find out just how much by visiting TextExpander.com and download a free trial. You'll be text expanding in no time at all. That's TextExpander from Smile at TextExpander.com. Thanks to Smile for being the longest-running sponsor of MacVoices. Wow. Okay. You're right. I did remember us talking about the Photos book, but I don't think I really, this sounds silly, but I hadn't equated that to a Siri function. That was more of a Photos function. So,
yeah.
Shelley, one of the favorite things though that I have, and I say that because for me, it's been so reliable. Not everybody seems to feel that way. But that is controlling some of my home automation devices. It seems to be, in my opinion, so much more reliable than Alexa. And nothing wrong with Alexa. It functions a high percentage of the time. But it seems like Siri just does it every single time that I use Siri for that, to turn the lights on, turn the lights off, whatever I'm controlling. That is the best way to do it for me.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it can control all the HomeKit accessories. And that, of course, includes HomePods if you have HomePods in your house, which is very nifty.
Yeah. Any specific tips about controlling home automation devices, or is it just pretty much that's what it does and it does it well?
Pretty much what it does. You can turn them on and off there's just so many accessories that it's hard to kind of give general tips because it's so accessory specific. But depending on what you have, it can hook into that and turn them off and on, or change the settings really easily. And I found it to be accurate too. So that's really handy too. If you, if you're not at home and you have a certain device with you that you want to be able to tag to connect into your HomeKit accessories, then you can just use it from whatever device you have, which is very convenient.
Yeah. One other place that we haven't talked about it yet, and I'm not sure if it's in the book or not, and that is CarPlay.
CarPlay. I don't have CarPlay. So that's one of the things. I upgraded all my devices before I wrote this book, which was a hard thing I had to do. But I don't have CarPlay. So I don't have any CarPlay specific tips. I do have some tips, though, that connect to using in particular, your iPhone in your car, whether or not you have CarPlay. And one of those that I didn't know about, which now I use all the time, which is really cool, is that you can mark where you've parked your car and then use your phone to find it again. So, I can't think of anyone who hasn't lost a car, especially at the airport parking lot. You go away for vacation, then you have no idea where you parked your car. Or IKEA, for instance, any Costco, any big place like that where it's so easy to lose our cars. You can actually just, even if you have, if your phone connects to your car with Bluetooth, this happens automatically as long as the feature is turned on. But even if you don't use Bluetooth with your car, you can just manually say to your phone, remember where I parked my car, and it drops a pin in Maps, and then you say, where's my car? When you get out of the store, and it will lead you right there. is cool. Like that's another one of those little things that you wouldn't know about. That's just really convenient. Someone really thoughtfully thought about, well, how could we make this useful? How could we make it solve a problem? So that's really great. And of course, Siri in the car, that's one of the places where the convenience starts to outweigh any inconvenience of using Siri. If you can't touch your phone, but you need to do something like change your music or hear a text that just came in that might be urgent, Siri's great for that. And again, I would say like sending a text for me, now that I've been working so much with Siri, is more reliable, but it still can make I find it's much more reliable with texting than with email, which I just don't use it for because it makes really weird mistakes with email in my experience. But it's really convenient in the car. And, my family is really into it now too. Unfortunately, I have a new phone, which, only responds to my voice. Hey Siri only responds to my voice. So, but there's good and there's bad with that. That means my daughter can't change the music that I've started. So I appreciate that. The HomePod doesn't imprint on a voice, so it responds to everybody. So that's good too. They like that.
Yeah. I have to say for CarPlay, it's working in the insurance industry, I know how important it is not to text.
Yeah.
And yet there is that terrible compulsion that, okay, somebody just texted me. What is it? And, is it something quasi-urgent or not?
Mm-hmm.
And it is so nice to be able to say, hey, Siri, read me my text.
Mm-hmm.
And then when she finishes reading, she'll ask you if you want to reply.
Yeah.
So it's all part of the process. Then when I reply, she will repeat my reply back to me before she sends it.
Yeah.
And so it's a seamless process, and it's a safe process, as opposed to even just reaching up and tapping the screen to see what the text was. Your eyes are off the road for that much time, and that's when bad things happen. So that to me is one of the best things about Siri on my phone and in CarPlay as well.
It's true. Siri in the car is great, and it's gotten a lot better. I don't have a phone that can connect to the car. I don't have a car that can connect to my phone. But now I have a new phone which works really well with Hey Siri. So I just have my phone. It sits like in the drink holder, and I can get directions from it. I can get my music changed. I can send a text if I forgot something that I needed to get at the store. I can send it right away. I don't have to touch anything. And so that's really one of the greatest places, one of the greatest uses for Siri is in the car. I would say in the kitchen probably comes second for me, because in the kitchen, your hands are dirty or wet. They're in the dishes or you're cooking. We have a HomePod in the kitchen, and I use it all the time. And part of that is the kids use it because they start music with it easily. But I ask it to play NPR for me. Actually, it can play my local NPR station as well. I play music with it. I ask it to do conversions for me all the time. So 16 tablespoons in cups, and it can do that easily and fluidly. If you need to cut a recipe in half or double it, it can do all the conversions and math for me without me having to touch anything with my floury hands. I can add something to my shopping list really easily. And that's another reminders use, but I can say, add bananas to my grocery list, and it does it. So I love it in the kitchen too. So I'd say kitchen and car, top two. But again, it's just, where is it that the convenience is going to outweigh any learning curve that you have? And I'd say there's a lot more places now than there used to be.
You bring up the learning curve, and that was, I know when I first started using Siri, and even now, I find that the biggest learning curve is just remembering that I can do some of these things.
Yeah.
I have to train myself that, okay, this is, instead of reaching over and, pulling up my favorites to make a phone call, you just say, hey. In fact, she just answered a minute ago. call my sister, or
RIs.
call,
Yeah.
yeah, and that makes just such a huge difference. So you have to spend a little time stopping and thinking. That, like you said about asking some of the sports information. Yeah, it's easy to go Google it, but maybe it's worth asking Siri if she can answer it. At the very least, she's likely to pull something up on your iPhone and say, "I found something on the web," which is still faster than you searching for it.
It's true. But it really, I think one of the things with Siri is that, again, if you tried it and it didn't work, then you just haven't tried it again. It keeps changing. So, I write every year, the newest Mac OS comes out and I write a book about it. So I feel like I'm basically on top of things, but I couldn't believe how many things I learned from writing this book, even as a advanced user as I am. And it's little things like I had never known that I could say, "Hey Siri, call blank on speaker." Like I didn't know you could do that last part just on speaker, because what I would do in the past, I don't know if I just didn't know how to do it, or you couldn't do it yet. That's always a possibility too. I would use Siri to call, but then I would have to look at my phone and tap the speaker. Totally unnecessary. You just say, "Call Dave on speaker," and there it is.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's like so useful. So there's, I think, a lot of things like that where if you've used it for a while, they keep updating it and changing it, and things that used to be inconvenient may have been fixed, and you didn't even know. It happens since it's going back to Apple's servers all the time. They're fixing it all the time. There's not like a release date, and they're adding things to it all the time. So that's part of the thing is you may think it's not good at something. Have you tried it recently? Because they're always improving it. And there's always things that you just missed.
And that's a double-edged sword, and we're about to go down a whole rat hole that is not worth going. But it is a challenge in today's world. You think you've learned something, and they add new features, and especially with something like Siri, there's no upgrade required or no update other than the obvious system software upgrades. That they are constantly improving it, and as you said, changing it. And so, yeah, you've kind of got to keep yourself educated about it, and books like yours are the reason that I was really happy to hear you did this book, because first of all, I know how you do. You're super thorough, but I'm going to go through it just like I did there, and I'm going to learn things that I either didn't think about it, or maybe it just didn't do it the last when I did think about it. And so, yeah, that's really interesting. Well, I don't know why I didn't think about doing that, but
Exactly. Well, it never occurred to me. It's like the easiest thing. It solves this problem that I'd had with Siri. I was always, "Oh, where is the speaker button?" You just say
yeah, yeah, huh. Very nice. So we've kept you, and you've shared a lot of things, and I've gotten a few ideas here. But any big surprises as you wrote the book?
I would say there were some things that I hadn't thought about that Siri could do, and I've talked about a bunch of those, but one of the things was how you could use Siri to call for help. That hadn't really occurred to me. If you think about it, especially with iPhones, people have their devices with them all the time, and they're there through the good and the bad. And I realized as I was doing the chapter on calling that you could say all sorts of things to Siri and it actually will try to help you. So the one that sort of led me into it is that I saw online you could say, if you said, "Siri, I'm drunk," it will say, I can't be your designated driver," or some other quippy thing like that. And then it'll show you there's a button, "Call a cab." So it tries to help. But it goes much past that. You can call emergency services, and you can say that in the United States by saying, "Call 911," and it immediately starts a countdown. So you can stop it, which is good because I had to test it a bunch and I didn't want to call 911 over and over. But if you're somewhere abroad, it will call whatever the emergency services is in that place, as long as location services is on. So if you've gone to Australia, it will call Australia's local version of 911. If you say, but it's much more detailed than that. If you say I've been robbed, it will give you a call emergency service button, but it'll also show you where the nearest police station is. If you say I've been in an accident, it'll give you the button to call emergency services, but it'll also show you where the nearest hospital is. If you say I've been raped, it will show you a number for the National Sexual Assault Hotline. If you say you're thinking of suicide, it doesn't give you a button. It says, I will dial right now the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline for you. So there's just really, I thought it's kind of touching, really, but it made me realize it's easy to forget how profound these devices are in our lives. Like people, and something like Siri too, people really talk to it. Like it tells them jokes, they ask it questions, and they're going to ask it questions too when things happen that are bad. And I appreciated that the Siri team has taken the time to really anticipate some of these things and make sure that Siri could offer help when it was needed. And that was a surprise to me because I hadn't really thought about Siri in that kind of serious, in that sort of a serious situation. But of course, that's what's happening. You know, people need help and they're going to ask whatever's going to talk back to them. And in some cases, that's Siri.
That's really intriguing. John Martellero was just on the show and we had quite a discussion about robots. And you don't think of Siri well, I don't. I shouldn't say that.
Yeah.
I don't think of Siri as, you know, a constant companion, but that world is coming, you know, and it's coming rapidly. It just depends on how you view it. And so now I may have to think of Siri a little bit differently. But your tip about you know, making the call on speaker is perfect. If you've gone down the steps or something, maybe you don't want to necessarily dial 911, but you do want to dial a family member or a neighbor.
Yeah.
And well, if you just call them, you're going to have a hard time hearing them if your phone's, you know, 2 feet or 3 feet away. Yeah. But if you say call and put it on speaker, then, you know, you can do it. So that's that's just a fantastic tip right there. But, and some of the others about, you know, being robbed or any of that. Yeah. That's, happily, I don't want to be in any of those situations, but if I am,
it's there. And, you know, as someone with not little kids anymore, but younger kids, they really do think of Siri, especially my younger child is 10. She really, like, she asks Siri to tell her jokes all the time, which I will say is something Siri's really good at doing. Jokes, puns. There's like a million. I have a whole big section about that. There's so many things you can ask it. But I can see, especially these kids, like my 10-year-old is an iPhone baby. Like when she was an infant and I was trapped in a rocking chair with her for hours and hours, I had an iPhone. It was amazing. It was so amazing. She played with it as a tiny infant. You know, I mean, there's this whole generation of kids coming up who these devices have always been around them and who they're used to talking to, used to asking to play them music or tell them jokes, read stories. And I think more and more like that sort of thing is going to come into play as they turn to these devices that they know can get them information fast for all different sorts of things. And
they don't have to remember to ask them. That just becomes sort of the natural flow of their world.
They just do it. And they try, and they're willing to try a few different ways. And that's the thing that is cool about Siri is I feel like at the beginning, you kind of had to know how to ask the question. And that is less of a factor now. Like they haven't anticipated many different ways to ask the same question much more effectively now. You don't have to think of how to word things or how to, in most cases, what keywords to include. Like usually that's really natural now. And that is a change from the early days of Siri.
Yeah. Shall we could go on and on. I feel like I've learned so much now. Now I've got to go and get the book and go through page by page. What I thought I knew a lot about this, and apparently I don't know nearly as much as I thought. So of course, takecontrolbooks.com is where you go to get it. Do you know what the cover price is on this one?
I think it's $15 or $14.99, something like that.
Okay. So the usual take control price.
The usual price. And I have been working on a series of videos to go with it because Siri it's about listening to a great extent. So there are, I think, about 5 videos up so far, and I'm continuing to roll them out. So some of these things that are a little harder to read and understand about, you can actually look at the videos and see it in action.
That's great. That's great. Okay, one more thing I have to do now after this. I don't know what to say except thank you for putting in the time and doing this, because you obviously are going to teach a lot of us more that we can do with Siri.
It's a cool book. It was a really fun book to write, and I hope people enjoy it because it's a really fun technology. It's been a while since I have really enjoyed all the detail and the playfulness in a piece of technology before. And it's really nice.
Yeah. And that may be the point to end on is if you try it and it doesn't work for you right away, try a little something else. Play with it.
Yeah,
and
you play. This is a technology you play with, definitely.
Yeah. All right. I'm not going to let you get out of here without making you promise to come back and talk about something before your next book.
Okay. I promise.
All right, folks, you heard it here. We got her. We got her. Scholle, thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on this show.
Yep, we'll do it again.
All righty.
Well, folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. We will be back with more, and Scholle will be back not with another book. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our MacVoices Facebook group and get more out of your Apple Tech with MacVoices magazine, free on Flipboard. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us at patreon.com/MacVoices and join these folks who help keep MacVoices coming to you. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.